On tonight's program, we start a new segment. Now for the what we're going to call the Frost Report, which is things from the Bug Report forum. The latest Foundry Challenge has a winner. It's Alpha Flight by Rimer Temek.
Yay!
Congratulations. And tips and tricks for NPCs.
There's actually one specific group, NPC group, that does not have a beam-in animation.
Join us on the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. This week we welcome back Markhawkman, who was absent with computer troubles. Say hello, Mark.
Hey, how you guys doing? Sorry.
Say hello, man.
And of course we have Hippiejohn, whose computer was probably built before anyone even invented tech support.
That's not a true thing. I have a fine 4-year-old computer.
That's like ages in computer time.
I know, I know.
And we also have Greendragoon. Insert something funny here.
New computer on Kickstarter.
There you go. And of course we start off with Foundry News as we always do. We have the winner of challenge number 7, which is Alpha Flight by Rimer Temek.
Yay!
Congratulations. Unfortunately, it was not one of the ones that I played, I have to say. We have...
Best is yet to come.
I always said that I would get to all of them, and then I didn't. So, now I know what it feels like to be cryptic. People are going to come after me for broken promises. Let's see, second place was a tie between Ricky Smith and Kirk Fat, and third place went to P. Sutherland. Now, P. Sutherland's was one that I did play. I know he was not very happy with it, but I thought it was pretty good. So it just goes to show you what other people will think your mission might not be in line with what you think of it. For better or for worse.
Never finished, only abandoned.
Very true. Very true. One of the other pieces of news we have is in today's patch, there were a couple of different NPCs added to the game, including Epos and squirrels and other creatures, a lot of them from New Romulus. And
so that triple patch finally made it live.
Yes. Because it was in the big patch with all of the new UI for carriers.
Overshadowed.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it's not exactly...
Take whatever shadows we can get.
Yeah, we'll take whatever shadows we can get. Now for the what we're going to call the Frost Report, which is things from the Bug Report forum. Greendragoon.
Yes, Cryptic Frost has been the usual busy beaver that he has been of late, and of course he's got a lot to deal with right now. A lot of people are still reporting a lot of bugs related to the Foundry, and Cryptic Frost has been trying to keep on as much as he can. He reports that a lot of fixes and stability improvements are kind of working their way through the pipeline, and in theory, some of them may have gone out with today's patch, which is Thursday for people listening to this. But he says that he doesn't think that it'll fix everything. Expect continuing bugs which they're continuing to work on.
What we've seen is some reports from people who have seen some improvements from it after the patch. But I think, Hippie, you were saying that there's been no difference for you.
Not so far, but so.
I tried
have not.
creating a Klingon character just before this, and I wasn't able to.
So that's still no fix there. Okay.
Yeah.
I've been working on bed, so yeah, it's still slow load times and still just, yeah, same as it ever was.
He did mention that the bug which caused space spoffs in the dialogue window to show up as generic, there's a fix in for that. That's working its way through the system right now.
Good news.
He also, this is a bit of array of light. He in the thread he started with about all the missing costume options. He made hints that some of those might be showing up here soon. Although, of course, there's always made no promises as to when.
And we are not taking them as promises.
No, we'll take hints.
Gotta hold up our end of the deal on that one, right? Well, one of the things that I saw in the forums today was there was a discussion about the next Foundry Challenge and whether or not it should be postponed. And Brandon Flanks chimed in and said, yeah, given the state of Foundry editing right now, we are going to postpone. So
I think
that's a good decision.
I mentioned that was my post that said, come on, man, you can't expect people to do a challenge with the Foundry in this shape, basically. And
I'd agree with that. So,
and
one thing he did mention in that post was that they do have some fixes incoming.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely...
Some of the issues are things that you could work with, but again, only some of them.
And some people are having it worse than others.
Have to work around completely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've still managed to get some work done on the Foundry.
Well, that's a good segue, Greendragoon. What have you been working on?
Well, as is the answer every week, at least
part 2, right?
Last couple of weeks. Working on part 2, and thankfully I was actually able to, for the first time, get some outside feedback on some of the things, which was kind of the first time anyone's seen inside part 2 besides myself.
Which we should really say your testers were me and Hippie.
They were. You guys were convenient.
We were here.
Do you guys want to share any thoughts about it? I mean, without giving away any spoilers.
Well, I didn't actually get to play yet.
Well, we can tell you that the map construction is awesome.
The map construction is really, really nice.
Dragoon has a talent for repurposing existing maps.
Yep.
Which is Rogan's way of saying for taking a really long time doing things. No, but I mean, you guys pointed out some really good things that I would have never considered. I mean, as far as like the usability and the perspective, because I mean, I'm someone who obsesses a lot about how things play out for a player and the experience the player goes through in a mission. So that like shed some light on a number of things. Also, allayed a few fears that I had, the things that I was afraid weren't going to work, that you guys are fine with.
And they worked just fine, yeah.
Beyond that, I've been working on my big map 8, and working on my ever-growing combination puzzle, which is actually a ton of combinations all slammed together, and it's quickly becoming this massive dialogue chain, just because all of these different combinations have to have their own success path, and they can definitely share the failure path, but it becomes a very cluttered mess pretty quickly. So it's interesting keeping track of all of them.
Well, I can say that... Go ahead, Mark.
It would amuse me greatly if someone was to go and actually try to put a puzzle into a Foundry mission where you had to either A, do some optional objective to find the code, or B, use brute force cracking to get the code.
I've seen a few people do that, where I always like an option to, instead of go through the big puzzle, to just hit the console and then it works.
I don't know of any of those optional objectives in any missions anywhere.
What I was thinking of is that if you do this certain little side thing, you'll get a series of numbers to put into the console. And
Mark, you just described the exact puzzle that I put into Spectre's episode 6.
Well, what I'm talking about though is that the other option is that if you don't find that, you have to sit there and stick in numbers at random until you finally get something that works.
Exactly. You've just described the exact puzzle that is in my mission.
Kidding.
That's my strategy for the cryptic
someone has
puzzles.
done that.
Yeah.
You just put in random numbers until it works.
I mean, because the way that it works is you have to talk to one of 3 bartenders. Any one of them can give you the special code that you need. And if you don't get the special code from them, you can stand there at the console just clicking numbers until you click the right one. And it's a 3-part code, so you would have to click a lot of numbers in order to solve it.
Yeah, that's why it's called brute force password cracking.
Right. It's exactly what you do in my mission.
Yeah. Good option to have. So. Well, Mark, have you been able to do any work in the Foundry lately?
Actually, I did do something in the Foundry today. I went over one of my old missions called Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant and did a few minor dialogue tweaks to it. There's one thing that people point out is I'd made a few typos when I typed up the mission, so I was going through the dialogue and looking for things that had been misspelled. And, this was also one of those missions that got affected by the removal of the Jim Hadar ensign unit. I had to replace them with an ensign and a lieutenant unit instead of just an ensign unit.
The unit's just gone? Ensigns are just gone?
I found that on another one as well. I'll get to that in a minute, but...
Huh.
It's just the ensign only unit. It's like how a while back they changed the display so that the commander units would be when you tried looking them up in the Foundry, they'd be listed as a lieutenant commander unit for some unknown reason.
Huh.
But it's not a major functionality change. It's just a tiny little minor annoyance.
So they basically got mislabeled?
I don't think it's a labeling thing in this case, though. In this case, instead of using 5 ensigns, they use 4 ensigns and a lieutenant. No big deal.
Wow.
Can't think of anywhere to use all ensigns.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know if you...
And this is something that I've encountered something similar as, because I'll tell you, one of the things that I did this week was fired up one of my old missions that is unpublished at the moment, and I had a bunch of Romulan mobs, and I wanted to move them around because I wanted to create a custom map for that part of the map. And what I was finding is I would move one, and it would say we have to reset the settings here, and you would have to click yes or no, and you click yes. And it would change it, and it would flag it so as, this resource does not exist anymore. And this was just like a Romulan ensign. Because I think the Romulan ensigns got changed. A lot of the Romulan just NPC contacts got changed somewhere along the line since I made this mission. So now I have to manually go in and change them all to pretty much the same skin they were before, but it must be labeled differently.
Well, Cryptic has actually tweaked the Dominion mobs rather often because a long time ago, back in I think season 5 it was, when they updated for season 6, they changed all of the Dominion mobs so that they no longer spawned founders as part of the mobs, and that all of the mobs had as a captain level enemy a Jim Hadar. Then a few seasons later, they changed it back so that some of the captain level mobs had a founder, and some of them had a Jim Hadar.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which actually kind of messed up one of my missions because I had you talking to the founder who no longer existed.
Oh, but the founders can be anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they typically don't shapeshift into Jim Hadar.
Yeah, typically not.
It's a great disguise, though. Until they get shot.
I'm going to have that in one of my missions now. Thanks for the idea to steal.
I'm full of ideas to steal.
Full of ideas to steal. I'll tell you, the other thing I was working on this week, and I was tweeting with you about it, Greendragoon, a little bit, is I just ran across this article about how colliding neutron stars may be responsible for the gold that is on Earth in some way. I didn't read the whole article, but with it was this really cool artist representation of colliding neutron stars. And I'm like, I gotta try and make that in the Foundry. Of course, making stars at all is somewhat difficult. You have to use planets and have to try and get them to where they don't look like planets anymore. So I've been trying to work on that a little bit, working with changing different backdrops and using it's like the Duritanium backdrop that turns everything blue. Or it's an effect, a weather effect or something like that. It turns everything blue.
It's a backdrop.
Backdrop.
It's a backdrop.
Yeah. I've been working with that and I need to place some nebula around there and try and place some debris, some of the ice debris I think would work to make it look like these things are colliding. So it could be a really cool backdrop for, a fight or an exploration mission or something. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it yet.
For part 2, one of the the few space mats which you guys didn't get to see, I've been trying to build one of those binary stars that has the plasma streamer running between them.
Oh yeah, sounds cool.
Well, going back to the neutron star thing for a little bit, that scientific theory you were talking about, the idea of it is that collisions between neutron stars produce a form of nuclear fusion that fuses much heavier elements than you normally end up with. Because normal fusion in the core of a star is believed to only very, very rarely produce elements heavier than iron. Because fusing to make elements heavier than iron actually consumes more energy than it produces. Thus, a high-energy collision like two neutron stars hitting each other would produce different elements than what you would typically get for nuclear fusion.
Right on.
I actually understood that. That's awesome.
If you do make this mission, there's one thing you got to do. You have to have an NPC in it when they get to the neutron stars say, "There be gold in them stars."
But I do like that the idea of including real astronomical phenomenon in Foundry missions. Trying to build those things. Like I built a Wolf-Rayet type star for one of my last missions, and I've included a thing about, a guy was studying dark matter in one of my other ones. I think it's cool. We got to put some science in our fiction, right?
Yeah.
Well, you've seen Elise's post on the real life star locations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh yeah, that's great.
That's pretty cool.
Well, one thing I did for the Beta Rana incident was I actually went and described the effects of what's called coronal mass ejection, and showed what had happened after an artificially triggered coronal mass ejection had laid waste to the solar system that you go to in the mission. Because
awesome.
You have this planet in what may have at one time been a habitable moon, that when you get a close look at them, well, half of their surface looks like molten rock. And then you have this starbase in the middle that was obviously heavily shielded and designed to stand something like this, and the outside of this starbase is smoking.
Cool.
Awesome. Hippie, what have you been working on? Hippie, you there?
As Baz would say, I had myself muted.
I was wondering.
As terribly unfair as I feel like it would be for some sort of an official challenge to be going on at the moment. Starbase UGC, or rather, Primetime UGC, last time that they did their episode, a week and a half ago, they started a contest. They said, we're doing a contest based on the fact that your Foundry is broken and that you don't have the editing capability you normally have, et cetera, et cetera. Their contest is completely story based. They haven't indicated exactly how little weight they're going to put on something like map building, but they're taking into account the fact that people can't build Klingon missions right now, so it's a Federation only challenge, but they're also saying
actually you can.
Well, you can, but it is a real pain.
Honestly, to do it with a Fed character.
To do it with a Fed character is a real pain because you can't test the mission.
I have never had a KDF Foundry character on the live server, and I did actually manage to do a KDF mission for one of the Foundry challenges. And you're right, it is kind of a pain. However,
it's just a pain. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's a pain. And that's what they're saying with their challenge too. It doesn't matter whether it's possible or not. What they're saying is it's difficult to do Klingon missions right now. Make this a Fed mission. It's difficult to make maps with this ridiculous preview load time right now. So don't spend all of your time trying to make a map. Do things simply and get our attention with your story. Make this mission about the story that you're telling rather than trying to be all technical and flashy. And so for me, I'm like, that's exactly my kind of thing. And I've been, even though it's really slow preview time still, and it's every problem that's been associated with the Foundry thus far, still I'm in there, trying to work on this kind of, Federation mission, strictly story. It's what I've been doing. I've been trying to put something together for this. But the only reason I think that I even feel like it's, it's fair and it's doable is because they're saying don't worry about the maps because the maps don't work right now. It's just, it sucks, but the maps don't work right now. So that's what I've been working on. It's a first contact mission. That's all I can really say about it. I'm still working on it.
I'd kind of toyed with the idea of entering that one, but I think I got enough projects at the moment. So
yeah.
I had some kind of cool ideas to use that colliding neutron star map as some sort of thing with the first contact, and I was going to try and figure out how to do a space jump.
Ooh, cool.
Figured, because falling damage hurts you, it doesn't kill you. You could essentially do a space jump. Is I wanted to have one, you're on the bottom deck of a ship or a shuttle or something like that with an opening. You leave your boss behind. You do the little thing with their waypoints and set them off to one side somewhere. You jump off. I gave you a little bit of a corridor using invisible walls, but allow you to have some interaction and aim for a airlock on the top of the ship below you, and then you spend the rest of the mission wandering around that ship doing things. And I'd make, obviously you can't force people to do this, but I'd have people request that they put on a environmental suit to do this. So it's trying to emulate a little bit the space jumps from the movies.
I think the hard part would be building the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're gonna have to see most of, if not all of the ship you're landing on.
The ship you're landing on, it would have to look like a ship, at least from above. So
I've only done the lip of a saucer.
That would be difficult, but could be done. And now, and what I was thinking about doing was turn that into a first contact situation, where you find this ship and it's in need of rescue. It's in a really bad area around this colliding neutron star. You got to go try and rescue them. It's somebody you've never met before, which is why your Vice Admiral is being asked to do the space jump, because you're the only one who has space jump and first contact training.
Nice.
That's how I was going to get around that.
I actually like that. You're the only one with both kinds of training that are necessary. That's pretty fun.
That was pretty good conceit myself, actually.
Only the insert player name here is awesome enough to complete this mission.
Yes. Finding an excuse to do what the game makes you do, which is be the center of attention.
I love creative excuses like that.
Yep. Well, let's move on to mission reviews. Greendragoon, why don't you start us off?
So, I played 2 missions this week, and I'll try to keep both fairly short. First, at the request of ChivalryBean, I promised I would give a review of his mission, Unexpected Reflections. And he's still kind of an author that's new to the Foundry. This particular mission, and I'll give the summary here. You're called into DS9 because they've detected one of the scientists aboard has activated a portal to the mirror universe. You search his quarters for the lab, finding that he's become obsessed with the existence of his mirror duplicate. After reaching the portal, you follow him to the planet in the mirror universe and follow the trail to his counterpart. So basically, as you can figure, this is a mirror universe mission, and it's short. It's only about 20 minutes long. But that said, for its shortness, I think it's got a good plot. It's fairly complete. I like the kind of the existentialism, I think would be a good word. It kind of raises the idea of someone not liking the idea of basically having a duplicate of themselves in an alternate reality. Story-wise, it was a little on the lean side. He doesn't go into too much detail about kind of the ancillary aspects of the story. He kind of sticks straight to the plot itself of you following this scientist into the mirror universe. That said, he does do some interesting things, kind of playing around with your preconceptions of what to get or what to expect from a mirror duplicate. That it's not as simple as in the mirror universe they're all evil, or that in the Prime universe they're all good. There's a choice at the end that I really like, and I'm not going to tell you anything else about it.
Cool.
That said, there's a number of elements I kind of felt like they fell a little bit short or unexplained. And like I said, this kind of goes back to the leanness in the story. The doctor is obsessed with this concept of his mirror duplicate, and you kind of find this from his journals. But it never goes into a great deal of detail about as to why he was so bothered by this or why he became obsessed. It's basically just a point brought up by your bridge officer who skimmed through his journal.
Okay.
On the side of the mirror universe, you end up on this planet, and it's a few details are given about it that's basically in control. That's been recently attacked by the Terran Empire, so these are kind of just like normal people. But he doesn't go into really any great detail about who they are, what the planet is, what these people for, and why the Terran Empire is interested in attacking them. And this isn't a notice given against him, but I kind of wasn't really sure I felt like there should have been more of a connection between the Prime universe, which takes place on Deep Space Nine, and the Mirror universe, which is on this random planet. I would have liked to have seen some kind of connection there to really reinforce the setting. Visuals wise, they were it was usually a case of modified stock maps. I mean, he did a fair amount of editing. Ran into a couple of issues with objects whose backs were showing and were invisible as a result, but otherwise nothing too bad. Gameplay-wise, the combat was very light, but at the same token, the pace of the mission was good. I mean, it was a short mission, so it wasn't even long enough to really get bogged down to it, and the pace of the story moved very quickly. Overall, like I said, I thought the plot was good. I'd like to see more details fleshed out. At 20 minutes, it's a very short mission, which does appeal to some people, but I'd kind of like to see expand it a little bit more, and I think he's got room to do that. I would like to see more connection, thematic relationship between the Prime universe and the Mirror universe. Either have them both taking place on Deep Space Nine, which is probably not that likely of a scenario since last we checked, the Terran Empire probably controls Terok Nor on that side. But the more likely, I'm sorry, John, you going to say something?
Sorry, no.
Oh, okay. The more likely scenario I think might work is if you move to the scientist lab to a planet and then compare and contrast the planet in the Prime universe versus the planet in the Mirror universe. Especially if this planet is war-torn in the Mirror universe and has been attacked. You could do some really fun things like have it be lush and green on the Prime universe side, but then you switch sides, go to the Mirror universe and have it very scarred and have a very battlefield feel to it.
Use Risa, and for the Mirror universe version, put a bunch of bombed out ruins on the map.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I like I said, I would just think it would be cool to kind of contrast like light versus dark or blooming versus destroyed, just kind of really integrate that in with the whole plot as a whole, which is really kind of comparing and contrasting these two states of being. So the other mission I reviewed was Duritanium Man by Zorbane. And this is a mission I actually played quite a long while ago. In fact, I played it when he first came out, and I liked it then, and I still like it. Summary-wise, it's basically you are called to the first ever Galaxy Fair, being kind of held as a joint thing between Grand Nagus Rom and the Federation Council. And specifically, you're called to this because Starfleet, or I should say specifically, a member of the Federation Council has asked that you meet with this eccentric inventor named Johnny Clark, and who has basically invented this new source of power called the spark reactor. You go to his test, and basically it doesn't go quite so well. And then things get worse when Johnny Clark gets kidnapped by Remans, and it ends up going into this very nice story, kind of revolving around this suit of armor he's built. And it's really, I mean, he does very beautiful custom maps. If you haven't kind of figured it out by all of these interesting names, this is very much inspired by Iron Man. And it's basically Zorbane's take on the first Iron Man movie. Although I should point out that aside from the names and a suit of armor and powered by a new experimental reactor, the similarities kind of end there. The story is still very much Zorbane's own making. Even the characters are very much Zorbane's own take. Johnny Clark is in no way a duplicate of Tony Stark. And in fact, I find Zorbane's characters to be very interesting and, I want to say deep, but very compelling. He's got a great sense of humor, and is very good about just kind of drawing you in with the characters' reactions to things and them dealing with things not happening exactly as they expect it to. He's a very talented writer in this, sense. There are a couple of, technical issues. I think are a few mistakes, things like, Bob's getting caught on doors, which is a result of, swapping out locked and unlocked doors. And there's a way that you can actually fix that by, putting invisible walls around, each side of the door so that the, pathing has something to look at. A couple of, I think one or two, exposed, back faces. And I think there was like one group of, one of the remnants was switched around. The, sub-commander and the commander group were switched around, so you actually kill the commander before you get to the final group, which is the sub-commander's group, but the commander is talking. A couple of minor things like that, but I mean, otherwise, it's a really detailed mission. It's a lot of fun. It's a fairly long one, but if you have like enjoyed Iron Man even in the slightest, and you want to see Zorbane's own particular Stowe take on this, it's definitely worth a play. He actually just recently republished it because it was dealing with a bug that prevented it from ever qualifying for rewards. So he's been trying to get plays for it, and I just want to encourage everyone to go give it a try. Like I said, it's a really fun mission. Definitely worth a player's time.
Sounds great. Mark, what mission have you got for us?
Alright, today I played a mission called Latinum is Forever by TeklionBenrasha. This was, like he was saying about Zorbane's mission. Zorbane drew inspiration from the Iron Man movies for his idea. Well, TeklionBenrasha drew inspiration from the 007 movies for this one. In this one, someone has managed to pull off a heist from a Federation storage facility and steal several metric tons of gold-pressed Latinum. And they need you to find the Latinum that has been stolen and recover it before the Federation has economic problems from such a massive theft of Latinum. Anyway, he did several things that I thought were kind of interesting, in that he built an interior starbase set and then duplicated it twice to use it 3 times in his mission, which it actually worked out quite well, and it's not something that I would have expected to see a new author do in the mission. Let's see. Most of the mission, however, takes place on Risa. He took a clone of the old Risa ground map, and he actually named it Risa. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be the planet Risa or not, but anyways, you go down there, you have to talk to the locals and find out what you know about this guy. And hold on, wait, I skipped something. Sorry. The first things you do on the starbase is you find out your only lead is that a certain individual who people thought was a trustworthy person faked or artificially induced a medical emergency to force them to drop the protective shielding around the Latinum storage area. Then you have to use this gizmo to hack into the guy's bank records in order to find out more information about the person, because aside from looking at his bank records, the guy appears to be squeaky clean, aside from the fact that he's mysteriously disappeared. Then after you do that, you go to this planet, talk to the locals on the planet, poke around until you eventually find out where the stuff was being stockpiled, and then you attempt to recover the stolen Latinum. Which, the basic mission concept is actually pretty cool. It's like this, super spy adventure, but with a United Federation of Planets twist. Which, I actually like that aspect of it. And for a new author, he actually did a reasonably good job of adding props to maps and, making it so that the maps had interesting things to do. Possibly my biggest gripe with it is the sheer amount of running that you have to do as part of the mission. Because one of the interior maps that the interior map that he used 3 times has this very long hallway, and the way he set things up, you have to run the length of the hallway several times as part of the mission. And that got kind of old. I actually whipped out my Frosty boots just to make it faster. And then when you're on the Risa map, I'm not sure if it's actually supposed to be the planet Risa, but anyways, when you're on the Risa map, you have to do a lot of running back and forth, but to a certain extent, that was actually necessary for his plot idea that he was doing, because you have to go to this cave, then you have to go to this peak that's a ways away from the cave, and then you have this stuff along the shoreline on the island. But he added a few things to the map that made it take even longer, such as these piers that look like they're about a mile long, and you have to run to the end of the pier and back several times. Also, he added a bunch of enemy groups to the map, and I think he kind of went overboard on the enemy groups because you end up killing a small army of Jim'Hadar.
Here's a question for you, Mark. Is it one of those situations where there are so many enemies and you can't progress past the map without killing them all because the author has used a kill objective?
Actually, the thing here is that it's one of the things where you're required to get rid of them because they're doing a ground invasion sort of thing, and they might hurt the locals or something if you don't.
But yeah, but technically it's a kill objective, so you can't just move on to the next part. Ooh.
Yeah, and I think there's a total of 30 enemy groups you have to kill. I'm not sure about the exact number. It's somewhere around 20 to 30. That got kind of old. I mean, because some of the ways that he set up the encounters were actually pretty clever. Like, you go inside the cave, and then the Jim'Hadar ambush you when you walk inside the cave. That was pretty fun. But then there's the rope bridge area where you go across the rope bridge, and then when you're halfway across the rope bridge, suddenly the Jim'Hadar pop up at both ends of the rope bridge and start shooting at you. That was actually very entertaining to do that fight, simply because of the fact that he didn't actually seem to use particularly strong enemy groups for the missions for the parts of the mission where they just come out of nowhere and bum rush you. Then again, I pretty much massacred all of the enemies on the map like, pathetic weaklings. So I don't know. Maybe it was just me kicking their butts harder than I should have. Not sure exactly. Anyway, so aside from that, yeah. You have to do a whole lot of running, and one thing that I would suggest for improvements to this is reducing the amount of running. Like with the interior thing, it's moving the stuff so that it doesn't use the long hallway for every single time you want to go from point A to point B. I'm not sure how many times I had to run through there, but I think at least 4. But anyway, so overall, it was a very good mission idea. Just one thing that needs a few tweaks to be a really good mission.
All right. Now, Hippiejohn and I reviewed missions from the same author. Do you want to go first, or shall I?
Sure. I'm certain that some of our points may end up overlapping. Yeah. I reviewed mission. I was going to review a mission called Bloodthirsty Enemies by Amahood. I believe that's how you would pronounce the name. the mission Bloodthirsty Enemies, I just liked the sound of Bloodthirsty Enemies better than Earth Invasion for the mood I was in. And when I read the description for Bloodthirsty Enemies, it said that it's the second part of the one that's begun in Earth Invasion. So I said, all right, I'll go play the first one. I want to say about this mission is that it's one of the perfect examples of the Foundry can be used for absolutely anything. We can create any story in the Foundry using the tool and the editor that they gave us, and in a lot of ways, that takeaway from the mission is probably one of the happiest things about it. This mission didn't speak to me very much at all. There's the thing I would say about it, there's some technical things, to talk about when I talk about technical things, but from a story perspective, this did not seem Star Trek at all, and even more specifically did not seem Klingon. In the leaps of there are leaps of logic and leaps of I just have to believe this in order to progress the story of the mission that just left me cold. That left me cold with the mission. But as I said, this is one of those examples of you can tell any story that you want with the Foundry, and if there is an audience for any story that exists in the Foundry. I'm certain of it. This was a story about a vampire, essentially, and I guess the issue that I have with it is that aside from the science fiction salt vampire or the iron vampires that we've, the vampires that we've actually seen in games, species M113, except for those, there's no such thing as Count Dracula and people who bite your neck and drain your blood, and I've, at least not to my knowledge. If I'm wrong about that and that exists in canon somewhere, someone correct me and I'm sorry. But it doesn't exist.
There was something kind of like that with that plasma energy thing that showed up.
Okay, this isn't that. This isn't that. This is straight up like Edward from Twilight type of vampire leaping on you and being like, I'm going to suck your blood. And it didn't work for me. It's totally not Star Trek at all. And that part of it alone made it not work for me. On top of that, there were some other things that really did not. The grammar and the spelling needs a pass, certainly, but there's a lot of modern day slang and colloquialism and ways of talking. I don't care what race I was in the Klingon Empire or what race my security officer was, rather. I should never be hearing a character in a show or in a story set in the 24th, 25th century that says something like, literally a line was, "All right, you Starfleet wimp." No, it just didn't work for me. It did nothing about the line worked for me, and things like that, modern colloquialisms, modern insults, that thing, appear all over the mission. And it was one of those examples of throwing everything at me that just when I thought the mission was over, like just when the prime thrust of the story, like the story had taken me on this adventure across Earth space dock that, a very, very interesting and effective use of, force fields and way to take down force fields by utilizing different areas of the station to move me around the station and move me into a confrontation with, the vampire that had been killing everyone and sucking their blood. All of that was really actually very well done. The movement around the starbase and the use of triggers and such to get me from place to place where you needed me to be, all of that worked really well. For sure. The problem that I have is just that the basic, I guess it's the basic, a lot of the storytelling choices just did not resonate with me. And I kind of knew that from the minute that I had the mission giver talking to me, which was, one, I get no sense of why this conglomeration of Orion slave girls, set this amazing thing up for me wherein a Starfleet admiral, just because he's a Ferengi, has been able to be paid a little bit of Latinum to betray Starfleet and get my ship to attack Earth space dock. It was, there were just storytelling conceits that did not in any way work for me. And so on that, I did not enjoy the mission. It seems to me, that those were just their storytelling decisions. And as I say, I believe that there is an audience for every story that is told out in the Foundry. There is an audience for people that want to make Admiral Bobo Goes to War. There are people that want to go do nothing but play grinders. And this mission, at least, this mission has a story. If it doesn't resonate with me personally, that doesn't mean that it's not going to resonate with someone who will have fun doing it. That to me, that to me says everything. And the use of the tool, the technical use of the tool, except for a perhaps an overlooked, or maybe just this is going to be too much work that I don't want to do. I don't know, that there were just no renaming. There was throughout the mission of anything that I fought. Even, I fight the big fight with the vampire, and then suddenly the Thekleri are on Earth space dock, and I'm like, what? What's needed? But nothing was renamed. None of the mobs. So I kept fighting, Ensign 01, Starfleet Tactical Lieutenant 03, and things like that. So, aside from the fact that things weren't renamed, everything, there was nothing special done with it for sure, but everything was used just fine. It's just the story did not resonate with me, and, that's where I'm at.
Well, I had a very similar reaction to his Federation ones. This would be, Long Lost Friend and then Long Lost Friend 2 and 3. 3-part series where you are aiding a Federation ship that is essentially experimenting with time travel, and allied with Section 31. Now, I've told you all my views on Section 31 before, so I won't get into that. But this is another one that falls prey to the notion of a secret organization not being secret. Because this captain comes up to you and he says, "Oh, I've been working with Section 31." Well, it seems to me that's a good way to get yourself assassinated if you go around announcing that. But what I wanted to do is start off with some positive things, which is the missions technically I thought were quite good. These were some of his first missions, I know, because he had a little note on there that it was the first Long Lost Friend is his first mission. I did not see a ton of what I would call new author mistakes. I mean, everything worked, all the objectives worked. Mission flow was very good. There wasn't anything where I got stuck or anything like that. So I thought that was pretty good. Mission construction was very good. He's got some problems with capitalization. He capitalizes a lot of things, too many things that really just did not need to be capitalized.
I know this is a mistake that I've made in the past.
Yeah.
Desire to capitalize every noun for some reason.
Mm-hmm. People like to capitalize words to place emphasis on them, which you don't really need to do. It just ends up looking out of place, I think. So, stick to capitalizing titles, proper nouns, things like that. One thing that I would say about mission construction is be careful when you're using things like the original series Constitution interior, because they're built with an eye towards accuracy, which means they're very narrow. Which, if you put a lot of custom objects in them, which he did, they can become very difficult to navigate and very difficult to fight in. So I would just, I'm not saying don't use them, just be very careful. And as it stands in his mission, that was one of the more interesting maps because he essentially Borgified the interior of a constitution, which I thought turned out very cool. It was like half assimilated. In the second mission, there were a lot of maps where you didn't do very much before the map transition, which is something that I learned a long time ago when I was a first-time author. If you're on a map, you want people to stay on that map for long enough where they don't feel like they're jumping from loading screen to loading screen, because as we all know, loading screens are kind of long in the Foundry. There's another issue he had was the temporal prime directive. He pretty much ignored it. You go back in time and interact with people and just pretty much announce yourself and what you're doing. This is not something that Starfleet officers would do. I had the same reaction that you had to bridge officer dialogue. My bridge officers were not at all acting like Starfleet officers. When you're a Starfleet officer, you are essentially, the analogy is, modern day navies is the analogy. They're very military, they speak very precisely, they speak with respect to each other, to respect due the rank of whoever they're speaking to, and if you're a Starfleet officer, you're very highly trained. You're not going to be panicky and emotional in general. You want to save panicky and emotional for very specific things to sell the danger of a situation, for instance. I had a real problem with his treatment of women in this mission series. There's only 2 female characters, and the only thing they're doing is dancing in scantily clad outfits and being treated horribly by all the men in the room. That just rubbed me the wrong way. I know things like Orion dancers are canon, but I don't think that should give people license to treat women poorly. That's just a personal opinion. I know maybe not everybody would share it. That's just me. In the third mission, I think is the only person I've run across that has used the giant Galaxy class model, which I thought was pretty cool that he used that. And I think that's one of the coolest parts of the mission series is that he used that model and there was an explanation for it. Pretty cool. One advice that I would have to him is to rethink, because you do end up fighting it and you do end up fighting some other alien starships. What he did was he reskinned Borg cubes as these other starships, which is real problematic when they explode because they leave huge cube wreckage. So you have this little normal size ship, one of the generic ships, I think, and it explodes, and you have huge city-sized blocks of Borg debris floating around. So I personally would find another mob to reskin for those. But I think probably my biggest objection to these missions was the character that the captain of this other starship, the one that you're aiding, he is trying desperately to set this guy up as your best friend from long ago. Somebody you've known forever. And I'm like, why is this guy my friend? I would never be friends with this guy. And and throughout the whole thing, there's little asides that say, so-and-so, who's been your friend forever, comma, and I was just like, I would never be friends with this guy. Now, I'm...
So that's a bit of, he's telling you, not showing you.
Yeah. He didn't show me any of my history with this guy of why we were friends. Maybe there's something where, he wasn't always like this. Maybe I get to the ship and I meet him and I'm like, why are you acting like this, man? I'm open to somebody saying that, I have known this character for years. I'm totally open to that because, I feel like my player characters have had long histories before I ever got to even meet them in Stowe. So they have friends from their academy days or whatever, I'm cool with that. But you gotta show me why we were friends. You gotta give me that history. You gotta make it somebody...
A few choices in there. It's even possible a few choices in there.
It was done really well in a mission called the Interwarp Experiment that I played and reviewed not too long ago, and unfortunately I can't remember the name of the author. Someone go look that up for me while I'm talking. Quick jump into the Foundry. Where he gave me choices of two possible backstories with this person. That was supposed to be my friend from long ago. And, one of them was, an old romantic flame. One of them was, this guy and I were involved in like a prank war back in the academy that got really out of hand. Which I thought both of those were really fun ideas, and I went with the prank war, and it was really well done. And he showed me why this person was my friend, rather than telling me and just expecting me to go along with it. Now I want to say to Amahood, because I know he has gotten very, very discouraged by people not necessarily enjoying his missions. I would say, don't be discouraged. Please, I would never say to anybody, stop making missions. Because as you said, there's an audience out there for him somewhere. If one person plays it and enjoys it, it's a success. I say.
Bingo. In the Foundry, with as many people as we actually get that play our missions, if one person likes what you did, you've done something worthwhile because you improved someone's game.
And I think one of the other things is he got very confused. I was looking at the forum post. He got confused as to what, people were saying they don't speak like Star Trek officers, and he was unclear about what that meant. And I would say the best way to get a feel for that is to go watch Star Trek. Go watch TNG. The TNG era, that's what people expect as far as dialogue, I think.
It's hard to
quantify.
Generally speaking, it's very hard to write dialogue that doesn't sound goofy when you're trying to write outside of what as, this is the way that people talk. So for us, it's modern colloquial slang. Outside of that, anything we write is going to sound slightly stilted. So there's the difference is modern colloquial slang doesn't sound like people in the 24th and 25th century will talk. The term wimp will be gone by then for certain,
I always just kind of try to picture a scene in the conference room of TNG and how a discussion would go on in there.
I always try to say a line out loud and try to say, all right, how would this character that, how would Captain Picard sound saying this line? Okay, I should rethink that or whatever, How would Martok sound if he said this? Oh, that would not sound very good at all. Let's rethink it. So I always try to relate it to think of a character from the shows or movies that, they may have a voice that sounds, they'd be that sort of character, and how would they sound saying what I've just typed in?
Now, one of the things that I like to do is when I'm writing something is I like to sort of do a casting in my head. I figure out, if I was making a movie out of this or a TV episode out of this, what actor would I get to play this part? In my big 5-part series, I had this admiral who's throughout the whole story. He's the one giving you your orders. And I thought, okay, this guy is Billy D. Williams. He's Lando Calrissian, only, as a responsible admiral rather than a responsible scoundrel. So I thought, that's the voice I had in my head when I was writing it.
So by the way, the Interwarp Experiment is by Astro Rob LA.
Thank you very much. Does he have the sequel done yet?
I have to look up his name.
Because I think it said it was going to be a sequel, and that was a really well done mission, I thought.
Nope, he's only got the one mission.
That's a shame. All right, moving on. Discussion topics. I thought it'd be good to give a shout out and talk a little bit about the thread that's been going on in the forums for mission exchanging mission reviews. This is where you post your mission, and in exchange for people running your mission, you run the missions that are posted on there by other people. And I thought that's a great idea because it's, as we all know, it's tough to get plays. sometimes. And that's a good way to do it. I've seen similar threads on the, I was poking around the Neverwinter forums today, because I never really had before.
A lot of those
and there's a lot of those threads there. People looking, people with thing that says, we'll exchange reviews. Please review such and such. And I will go review your mission. So I think that's great. We've got sort of a central clearinghouse for this effort. It's in the general Foundry forum. So I'd say go check it out. And anybody have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, Zorbane's been kind of maintaining a list too.
Mm-hmm.
Yay, Zorbane. That's what I have to add. Really, seriously.
I know next time I
Zorbane,
publish something, I'm
awesome.
going to put it in there.
Yeah, that was a pretty awesome idea that Zorbane came up with there.
Well, grats to Zorbane for a successful little program we got going there.
Yeah, well, yeah, this all relates back to his problem with the having to basically restart his mission because he got up to like 87 reviews and
it was still not qualifying.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a bug.
Yeah, well, I think he's hoping though that basically recopying the mission will clear that out.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I really like about it is, so, one, I love that it's a place for people to get more plays and more people talking about their missions, because that's what you need as an author. It's what will keep you working at making future missions, is to have people talking about what you're doing and discussing it with you. And that's why I think that thread is great. If for no reason other than that. And kind of on a, sort of a more personal, like, hey, look at this cryptic level, it's a great example of the fact that our search tool is broken so much that authors are being forced to resort to creating such threads in the forums in order to even get their missions seen, in order to even get their names out there, because the only thing in the search tool, in the top rated list, is not story related anymore. The weighted rating system is broken and we don't know how it's going to get fixed. So this thread on a little wanting to put this in front of their eyes level. This is one of those that makes me say, hey, look, it's broken.
Yeah.
So I like it.
I was
thread
actually
on multiple
looking
levels.
at that on my missions today and realized that most of my missions were being downrated by the weighted rating thing by a full star
or more
because of the number of plays.
I mean, even at the top of the list, you still get some kind of down rating.
Yeah.
Mine's fairly close to the top, and it still, I think, loses like 0.2.
Yeah, we know it's broken. Everybody can tell it's broken.
I'm going to say, even if we had the perfect search system, and I'm not entirely sure what that would look like, I don't think Foundry authors are still going to need to advertise their missions above and beyond just publishing it. Just because we're to the point that we've got so many missions that, I mean, even if you, eliminated all the grinders, got rid of the waiting system.
So you'll still need to advertise your mission, but there's a thing that you won't need to do anymore. You won't need to convince the player who is opening up right now, the player who opens up the Foundry for the very first time. Aside from the spotlight list, they're going to see mostly this is how the Foundry authors have made loot and grab missions, because that is it. There are a couple of stories, within that top 50. There are a couple of good authors within that top 50, but most of them are loot-o-matic nonsense. So the average new player, figure someone who has never started up the Foundry before, opens that up, opens up that search bar, and however many out of the top 50 are nothing but loot grinder missions. They're going to believe that aside from the spotlight list, there are not really any good stories in the Foundry because they can't find them. If you have that separate search tool, the thing that it would do, the thing that the authors would no longer have to do is the authors would no longer have to convince new players that there was such a thing as story in the Foundry.
Mark's got to go a little early.
Oh no.
Bye, Mark.
We'll wait
Bye, Mark.
We'll wave goodbye to Mark.
Say goodbye, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, busy in your life. All right, well, see you guys later.
See you, Mark. We'll finish up with our technical discussion for this show. Greendragoon, what do you got for us?
Okay. So, in continuing with the discussion series, this week I wanted to talk about tips and tricks involving NPCs. This is another one of those something you don't typically get into until you really start to dig into the intricacies of how the Foundry works. And part of that is knowing where the quirks are, because there's a lot of really cool things you can do with NPCs that no new author is going to know out of the bat. And frankly, I mean, usually knowing these things is about knowing where the bugs are, not where the features are. So, I mean, I kind of thought it opened up to you guys. Do you guys have any cool tricks that you have that when working with NPC contacts, NPC groups?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's been a big help to me when making NPC costumes is the duplicate button. Okay, so for the most recent mission I published, which is Land of Hope and Glory, I needed a big civilian marketplace. So I wanted a whole bunch of NPCs that looked like civilians. So what I did is I created a few different aliens that looked, sort of in civilian clothes, in the generic, the shirts, the mercenary vests, things like that. And then I duplicated them, changed the facial features, duplicate again, change the height, change the facial features, change the skin color, duplicate again, so that, it was an easy way to get a whole bunch of these different ones. And then place them all throughout the map. Here's a trick. Okay, if you want a map that's populated by a whole lot of friendlies, use friendly NPCs instead of NPC contacts, because you get more of them per thing you put down. And then you can save your actual NPCs for ones that you want to talk to.
On that thread, it's good to know that when you assign a animation to an NPC group, pretty much all of them will follow that specific behavior set. But if you're doing an entire crowd, you can mix and match the groups and have them spread them out so not everyone in a single group is together, and that way that kind of increases the more random feeling. So everyone in the group might be leaning against a wall, but they might be leaning against a wall in completely different sides of the plaza or something like that.
Yeah, make sure when you assign an animation to an NPC group, you have to assign it to all of them at once. You can't vary it.
Do you have to assign it individually per actor, or do you assign it to the group and then
you assign it to the group as a whole, and each actor is doing it. So, if you assign one of them to do the thing where they've got their arms crossed in front of them, then they'll all be doing it.
That's another thing is the legacy
Here's a question for you.
Group animation is still the strongest one, though. It has the most options.
Yes.
I was going to say, if you put the whole group doing, the crossing arms animation, for example, do they all do it on the same rhythm? Do they all cross their arms at exactly the same time and uncross them at the same time?
They have their own random generator. So,
okay.
In theory, if they all start on an idle, they'll all be doing the exact same animation all in sync. As soon as a weight gets kicked, and one of them might trigger to wander, and one of them might trigger to do their talking animation, and one might trigger to work at a console.
Then it will mix up. That's good.
So yeah, it will mix up. It
That's
might
really
be the same when they first start, because usually idle usually gets the strongest weight.
So as the newest author in the bunch, I'll ask the questions. Because I really don't have any thoughts of what I do with NPCs.
Well, I'll tell you, wander I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking to make like I did, is just, a large area of civilians wandering about this marketplace. So I put a whole bunch of them on wander. Now you want to keep the speeds low if they're just walking around. And you want to, I always set the distance and the nodes to as high as I can get them, and the speed, around 8 to 10, somewhere in there. So I always space them out. I never leave the NPCs if they're going to be wandering. I never leave them in the cluster that they come in.
So have you guys ever used the job animation setting?
I have not.
I haven't, because by the time I started working in the Foundry, the red outline that told you which objects were job usable didn't exist anymore.
I know it includes most of the Fed consoles.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain of, I've seen missions using it, so I'm like, I know that it's consoles and stuff like that, but I don't know which consoles, so I've just never used it. It's a feature I'd love to see back.
Yeah, I think it's something that didn't necessarily always work.
And that might be why they
The one time I used it, it seemed to work pretty well. I mean, like I said, I think most consoles have some kind of hookup for that. I know even ones that like appear on platforms. I've gotten NPCs to like go type on, like be on a platform, one of those complicated platforms, and be typing at something on a console built into that platform. Another thing, and this has been a more recent update, is kind of the nature of spawning and despawning NPCs.
We definitely despawning NPCs it opens up a lot of things. Because it used to be you'd really have to do some tricks. Like I remember one where you were going to talk to this NPC, and you'd go down a hall, you'd find him in the middle of the hall, strike up a conversation, then continue on, and then I was going to have you come back up. He'd tell you he was off to do something else. Then you go in a room. Next time you come out in the hall, he's supposed to be gone. Well, it used to be I couldn't despawn him. So while you were in the room, one of the consoles you interacted with dropped the floor out from under the hall so that he would fall away, and then it spawned another floor under it. So the hallway looked identical, but the NPC had gone. And that's cool. Actually still there. I have not updated it.
I know to this date, Kamala is still hiding under a rock on her planet in part 1.
Yeah, it was possible to spawn some objects around NPCs, like crates, I think used to work. There are some things that will
disappear.
Yeah. So they wouldn't really be disappeared, they'd just be inside something where you couldn't see.
And even in rare occasions now, it's still useful because when we tie an NPC contact to an objective, we cannot the only time we can despawn them is when their objective completes, which can be a royal pain. Mm-hmm. There's one specific aspect I wanted to touch on, and that is beam animations. Contacts beam in, they do not beam out.
That is annoying. I would love it if they would change that, or at least give us an option. This comes to one of those tribal knowledge things. There's actually one specific NPC group that does not have a beam in animation, and that would be. Hang on, I'm sorry, I gotta look it up. That would be the Targ Neutral Squad Captain 01. That specific one, and thankfully it's neutral to the player, but I think it's hostile to enemies. But
be careful.
But I've used that specific group to do NPC swapping. So for instance, let's say I've got that contact that I want to get rid of, but I don't want to get rid of him as soon as his objective is done. What I will do is I will still get rid of him, but I will simultaneously spawn in his costume attached to one person from that Targ group to spawn at the same place. There's a little bit of fading while they're swapping out, but for the most part it's seamless. And then I can get rid of that group whenever I want. This is also really useful if you want to try and do a custom appearance animation. For instance, let's say you're doing a Q mission and you wanted Q to flash in front of you. You could use or have this group set the Q flash as his default animation, and he will Q flash and appear in a Q flash. So there's lots of kind of fun things you can do with that specific group because it does not have its own B-man animation.
Nice. Well, let's see. I don't know. I can't think of any more tricks off the top of my head.
No,
that's most of it.
Neither can I.
Yeah, we got some good ones in there. Well, I think
that last one is a really good one. I want to.
Yeah, I said, it's one of those things that I've figured out, and I have just hung on to it.
In the show notes, make sure you note what which group that is.
Yeah.
So that I can copy it down.
Yeah, because basically it allows you to kind of do what we do with interactable objects and like swap them back and forth. So different versions.
Well, excellent. All right, guys, I think we'll end there for the night.
Yeah.
So say good night.
Good night.
Good night.